Hello, this is Lee back once again for another review. This time I'm going to be taking a look at Shimmer 53. Now, Volume 53 was recorded April 6th, 2013, about 1 week before 54 and 55. Let's see if I have them here. Yes, 54. Great show. 55. I attended these two live, and I'll be talking about those a little later. But for now, let's talk about 53. Now, this was recorded at the Meadowlands Expo Center in Secaucus, New Jersey, a totally new venue for Shimmer. This was part of the WrestleCon event, which was taking place around the time of WrestleMania for the WWE. Anyway, this was a chance for independent promotions to kind of show their stuff to wrestling fans, especially fans who were not familiar with independent wrestling, the lower budget, freelance agents, not the giant stages and celebrity endorsements like WWE, to a lesser extent TNA. But anyway, Shimmer, I think, did a great job at the show, and I'll be talking more about the live show, live, because I watched it over streaming video. The WWN network, WWN live service, which operates on an iPPV model and video on demand, streamed the event in real time, and then this digital versatile disc was edited together later and released, and actually the cut of the video on this disc is the same as what you will get with the video on demand currently on their website. There are many other videos there, including volumes 1 through 25, which of course were never available as iPay-per-views. The only actual iPay-per-views besides 53, 62, and 71, they plan to do one each year if they can. But anyway, this digital versatile disc is not what I initially saw. It's very close in terms of, the matches, music. The commentary is different in portions. Wonderful artwork, of course, as usual. It was a shorter show since it was only about 3 hours as opposed to 7.5, because normally they record 2 volumes in one night, and then the next night 2 more. So they had basically a half of a day of recording, and then they got a week off before 54 and 55. So anyway, 53 was different because normally there's about 250 persons in the Berwyn Eagles Club. In the past, the attendance rate was 180. They bumped it up to 250. But for a show like this, you had many more fans in attendance, and I believe Joey Eastman, the announcer, this was not on the digital versatile disc. He made a couple of jokes saying, like, we have 80,000 fans in attendance, or 180,000. He gave some ridiculously, obviously fake number, but it was between 750 to 900. It was less than 1,000 for sure. It was more than 500. At the beginning, very beginning, you can kind of hear some fans kind of talking, how many is this? Looks like this number. Anyway, some fans who attended the live show apparently complained and said, well, this isn't what we like, because if you imagine a WWE event is going to have, thousands and thousands of fans in a large venue, also TNA shows will have something similar. And if you are sitting in, decent seats, you will probably still be looking at, a little ring off in the distance. It's hard to make out details. You can't really see the wrestlers' faces very well. It's like you're watching a play, but you're sitting in the balcony, or you're sitting in the back row, and you can't quite see very well. In an ordinary Shimmer show, even if you have general admission tickets, you are so close to the action. It's like you could almost reach out and touch the wrestlers, or if you hopped over a couple of rows, you'd be standing at ringside. That's how close you are. The action is that intense, and actually, when you're watching it on your television screen, it looks a little more distant. So when volume 62 was recorded, it was in a smaller venue, and apparently the fans that were there live said, "Oh, it was a much greater experience." I think there would be a certain energy with that many fans as there were at the Meadowlands Expo Center. They would really get the crowd going, really get the performers going, and feedback into each other. And I'm glad that they got to have that experience. Now, of course, there are some of the Shimmer wrestlers who have hit the big time, as it were, but many of them are used to, I'm sure, wrestling smaller venues, and so this was a chance for them to really do something special. So I can understand why some of the live fans maybe didn't appreciate the event as much, but I was proud of them for what they were able to do. Anyway, looking at the digital versatile disc, I'm going to talk about some of the matches here. Now, it was interesting because we saw some wrestlers that we hadn't seen wrestle in a while. Now, Shimmer is usually behind on the recording, but so some of these wrestlers had not been seen before, unless you'd been going to every single live show, which most fans have not. Also, some of the entrance music that was used had not been heard in a while. And then there was the live commentary going on. So there's some unique features. And of course, most of the fans in attendance, I'm sure, had never seen Shimmer. So anyway, it was very good overall. Okay, so at the very, very beginning, we had Mia Yim, who I've talked about before, who now wrestles as Jade in TNA. I actually appreciated her character more, I think, in Shimmer, because even though she didn't talk a lot, she let her moves speak for themselves. On television, she just hasn't had that many matches. Normally, she's just hanging out with the Dollhouse faction and jumping in and interfering in matches. But I'm really not here to talk about TNA. I'm here to talk about Shimmer. So she comes out and has the opening match against Amazing Kong, also known as Awesome Kong. But when Amazing Kong came out, she had not been seen for quite a while. Of course, she went through some family crises. She became pregnant and took time off from WWE, and then it was discovered that she had had a miscarriage. A very sad story. And it was unclear if she was going to come back to wrestling at all. But then she appeared on Shimmer, and I think the fans greatly appreciated it. She's such a unique character, person in the world of women's wrestling. Very unique. So she was back, had a match with Mia Yim. It went as you would expect. Mia Yim did her best with her many athletic aerial moves and kicks and things, but Awesome Kong is just so amazing. She just brought her size and everything else to it, and brushed it off and went on her merry way. She actually came out to her TNA Awesome Kong music, as opposed to her usual Amazing Kong music. But nevertheless, it was a good match, and it showed what they could do. There was a bit of a delay after that match. We saw, of course, the next match is Veda Scott and Shaza McKenzie versus Cherry Bomb and Kimber Lee. There was a bit of a, what would you call it? Not a backstage segment, but a non-wrestling segment wherein some characters, we basically had a heel team, if you will, Sassy Steffi and Nevea, interrupting Serena Deeb, Allison Danger, and Leva Bates. Regeneration X came out later. It was basically a confrontation between the good girls and the bad girls, essentially. And this was a surprise entry with Jessica Havoc. Now, she was known as Havoc in TNA. She tried out for NXT, but because of some personal issues, she had posted some tweets that had apparently got her into trouble. And so we're not sure if she's returning to wrestling or not, but she's kind of been out of the public eye for a little bit. Anyway, at this time, Jessica Havoc, I had heard much about her. I had seen a couple of matches where she wrestled against men, but really, seeing her in the ring, her size is incredible. Of course, Amazing Kong is the biggest overall wrestler that has been in Shimmer. But Jessica Havoc is very imposing next to these generally smaller, more slender women. Anyway, so Jessica Havoc forms the Midwest Militia with Sassy Steffi, with Mademoiselle Rochelle, her valet, and Nevaeh. Now, Nevaeh's look has changed considerably since she was a good guy wrestler in with Ashley Lane in the tag team run, and I personally think she looks stronger, more athletic, and even her character has improved greatly. So I started to pay closer attention and root for Nevaeh at this time, whereas in the past I wouldn't have cared so much, more about, well, who is she wrestling against, as opposed to, I want to see her in the match. And Jessica Havoc I was very impressed with. She did not have the traditional look of a women's wrestler you would see on television, and so when she came into TNA, I appreciated that, adding to the diversity. She was not afraid to make herself look scary for the sake of the character and the match and the drama and so forth, and she did that well here. But I will say, during this segment, when the characters were talking back and forth in the ring, and they were bringing out chairs, but they weren't actually using them, they were just kind of threatening to, and this was to set up a match, I think the crowd, the fans began to chant something like, we want wrestling, I didn't do the voice that time, but they seemed kind of impatient. So I don't know what they could have done about this. Shimmer generally is light on the backstage segments and much more into let's get into the matches, let's get into the action. I forget the actual schedule that day, if the fans were burnt out already, or if they'd seen so many action-packed matches that they were waiting for what's the next one. But moving on, Shaza Mackenzie from Australia, and Veda Scott, who now appears in Ring of Honor. The two of them come out newer wrestlers, newer faces, younger. It seems as if just about every time they would come out, there would be a mishap of some kind. Usually Shaza would kind of trip and fall as she was going around the ring. I'm sure the first time it was a mistake, and after that maybe they kind of played it up as if she was clumsy and she would do it on purpose. But she would actually fall, and I'm sure there was a little bit of worry, is she going to be injured? But she was fine. At other times, Veda Scott will, maybe nothing will happen, but she will stumble as she's getting into the ring. And of course, her gimmick at that time was kind of a nerdy girl. She wore glasses, and she would take them off right before the match. And it's possible she can't see out of them. I don't know in her real-life situation. But the two of them were kind of a goofy, green newbies. And anyway, I wasn't really on their side, but at the same time I felt, they were entertaining with their antics and things. Yes, let's see. So, Cherry Bomb, she apparently is the a cousin or a distant cousin of Taylor Hendricks. Taylor Hendricks, of course, has never wrestled for Shimmer that I'm aware of, and she was in TNA. Cherry Bomb, Laura Dennis, she had some matches briefly in TNA, but essentially she's been good, she's been bad, but she and Kimberly, now Kimberly had debuted in the Sparkle pre-show before. There was no pre-show for Volume 53, but the two of them formed a heel team against the Lovable Goose. I call them that. That's not their actual tag team name, but the two of them squared off against the other two. It was an okay match. I think this gave them a chance to have that large crowd experience. It was just average, I suppose. Nothing against them, but they just didn't show. They didn't appear to be that as over the top, as seasoned, as dramatic as the others, but certainly a good match, especially compared to what you will normally see on television. See, even the average Shimmer matches are generally better than what's on TV. Other than the celebrity star power, the higher budget set, really Shimmer in most independent women's wrestling is much better. than the television product. Now, of course, in Japan, you would see the best. Lucha Libre in Mexico, I don't really enjoy the women's matches there as much. I think they're still a little bit more skewed towards the looks of the wrestlers, much more on kind of jokes, and there's far fewer women there. It's usually like one or two, similar to what we saw in Lucha Underground more recently. The British wrestling, there's a few. I think there's one all-women's promotion, at least in the UK, called Pro Wrestling Eve, which I'm not familiar with. There's NCW Femme Fatales in Canada. I should mention Bellatrix in the UK also, which apparently is very good. Australia has PWWA, but I'm less familiar with those, much more familiar with the North American or Japanese. And as far as the North American, excluding Canada, excluding Mexico, but in the continental United States, Shimmer is where it's at, as far as women's wrestling. And the matches there are much more designed, I think, for the athleticism. I have not checked out Shine. Shine is exclusively iPPVs. The first 5 volumes, I believe, are available as digital versatile discs, but they are up to 30 or 31 actual shows. And just from the little bit I've seen, it appears the tone and the style is a bit different. But someday I may check those out and get into them. But let's move on. Calamity versus Rhea O'Reilly versus Evie versus Christina Von Eerie versus Yu Yamagata. Now, Yu Yamagata was a debuting Joshi athlete, a little bit different than what we've seen before. I think most of the other Joshi performers, very over-the-top personalities, very charismatic, comedic, combined with vicious, fighters, tag team focused. Yu Yamagata was a little bit different. Certainly she has great skill, great charisma, but she is a kind of a sneaky, kind of cowardly, quiet, cunning wrestler. So a bit of a different style. So I think it was good to see that, and not to have, as good as the other Joshi performers are, not just one set type of wrestler that they would be expected to be. So Yu Yamagata. Now this match, it was a little different. I think it was one of those ones where you had like the rules where you start off with 2 wrestlers, and it's a tag team, but not, because if you tag someone in, if that person wins, you lose. I didn't really, I don't think it was as good as it could have been as far as the organization. I think if they just have straight actual teams, or everyone for themselves all at the same time, that's generally the type of match I prefer. But nevertheless, it did give an opportunity for each of these wrestlers to show off their different skills. I noticed Christina Von Eerie, who has appeared as Toxin or Toxine briefly in TNA. She was dating one of the male wrestlers at the time, and when he left the company, I think she left at the same time, which is natural to assume. But anyway, when she appears here, her hair, she normally has a mohawk, spiked up, to the top of her hair. This time she just kind of let her normal hair show, and so I think it was a little different. There was a few jokes related to her hairdo, but her character, kind of a British punk, even though she's not from Britain, kind of character. Very entertaining. Let's see. And I think I had a bit of a criticism of Christina Von Eerie at first. When I met her at one of the after parties, very, very nice person, very friendly. But her in-ring work, I felt as if she didn't really do a very good job of what they call selling, meaning if someone punches you in the face, you're going to show that, that hurt a lot, and I'm going to have to, move and to recover and to fight back, which adds to the drama, making the moves look realistic, because of course we are talking about professional wrestling after all. If people don't believe the moves, they're going to get bored, they're going to lose their suspension of disbelief. And some wrestlers oversell, they say, making it kind of slapstick and comic book cartoony, but others make it very realistic. Now, there are times when wrestlers, I think of Amazing Kong, someone will strike her and it won't have any effect because she's so tough, but at least she'll kind of, throw it off with her sheer, ferocity. Christina Vanieri, I felt as if she kind of gets thrown around and kind of knocked to the ground, and she kind of grimaces a little bit, but it almost as if she doesn't feel it. It's like she didn't feel it at all. Well, so I was watching her closely in these matches to see, what's wrong with this performance. Now, otherwise she's very good. She's made a couple of mistakes, but everyone does. I think in more recent volumes, after this one, Christina Vanieri, I saw a great improvement in her performance. I felt as if she did sell much more convincingly, better. She still, did her characteristic, punk things, but she just improved overall. I think she is a much better wrestler now than when she first appeared in Shimmer. But anyway, here she was not quite where she is now, but on that road, if you will. Yes. Calamity, once again, I miss the protege of Lufisto. I think she had a unique style. She started to soften up a little bit. When she first came in, she was very stern, very stoic, kind of this goth, I'm not sure how to describe her, this dark, strong personality, very few words. When she opens her mouth and she speaks, she speaks French very well. Her English, bit of an accent. She doesn't sound. I guess she sounds to me not like that powerful of a wrestler. She just kind of sounds like a normal person. Nothing wrong with that, but for me, it ruined the character just a little bit. So I'm not sure how she would have. Maybe just if she had stuck to the French. I think she sounds better in French. It's a preference thing, I suppose. But anyway, Calamity, a great wrestler in her own right. I think she was just starting to hit her stride before she stopped wrestling. And I don't know all the details, but unfortunately she's no longer part of Shimmer, and I think that's a loss for all of us. But we can enjoy her matches now, these remaining matches. Rhea O'Reilly. Now, Rhea O'Reilly appeared in Sparkle before she debuted in Shimmer. At the time she was in Shimmer when she first started, she was kind of a green wrestler, and I'm not just talking about her outfit, much more like the cowardly heel. As a personality, though, I think she has a lot of fun with it. A lot of jokes about her Irish heritage, her personality, but I think she really got into it, and I think she has the type of character that they're just fun to watch. They're the type of character that you know they're not going to win, but you still want to see them try. You know what I mean? So anyway, there's that. So Rhea O'Reilly and Evie. Yes. Well, I have to talk about Evie. She is from New Zealand, and very slender wrestler, almost like a dancer. I could picture her figure skating. I don't know if she actually does. Focuses very much on kicks, sort of like a happy-go-lucky young person with the fans. Anyway, I think she does a good job. The fans were not very familiar with her at this time, but I think she won them over just with her smiles and her, acrobatics and things. So I think that match, despite the premise of the match not being to my liking, just acting as kind of a showcase for each of these wrestlers, especially to introduce them to the audience, I think was effective. So, moving on. Jessica Havoc and Sassy Steffi and Nevaeh with Mademoiselle Rochelle. So, moving on. Yes. Well, I suppose before I move on, sorry, I should say that Serena Deeb once more is in her usual form. I think she does a good job. I think she gets the crowd going. And of course, some may remember her from the Straight Edge Society of WWE with CM Punk and Doc Gallows, I believe was his name. But anyway, when she comes out, she does her usual, attempts to get everyone going on her side. And I have nothing negative to say about Serena Deeb and her performance on the show. And also because this was one show rather than two in a night, you didn't have most wrestlers didn't have like a first match and a second match, so they had a chance to get warmed up. They really had to make it count, and I think everyone did a good job of that. So Serena Deeb, Allison Danger, and Leva Bates. With Daphne. I forgot about Daphne. Daphne appeared, and she had not been seen in Shimmer in a long time. Now, she did not wrestle, but she was there at ringside, and I think that lent some star power. Again, every familiar face to these many fans who had never seen Shimmer before, that was helpful to see. So Daphne, of course, has been through many injuries and things. She's not back as an active wrestler, but it's good to see that she's still able to participate in her own way as a valet, as an announcer, as a manager in Shimmer, doing what she loves to do. So that was good. Now, Leva Bates and Allison Danger, of course, continuing the gimmick of the Regeneration X tag team, coming out with costumes. This time they dressed as Jay and Silent Bob from the Kevin Smith movies, two couple of stoner, guys that just kind of loiter around and say silly things. Well, so it was interesting. It was funny seeing two young women dressed as these two men, these male characters. So it was very goofball. I believe Leva Bates was playing the Kevin Smith character of Silent Bob, and she had a fake beard that was, obviously pasted on, and it was kind of falling off during the match. So very silly. So always a good time, if for no other reason than to see, well, what are their characters going to be, and how is that going to take shape in a wrestling match? Usually their opponents don't take too kindly to it, and just try to mock them and beat them up. Yes, and Allison Danger, of course, now retired from active wrestling. Very sad to hear about the many injuries she sustained over time, but she's persevered with her family, and we, as fans of Shimmer, owe her a debt of gratitude for all she's done for women's wrestling, for the Shimmer promotion, just in general. So, here's to you, Allison Danger. Anyway, moving on, Jessie McKay versus Madison Eagles. Now, I appreciated this match very much. Now, I had said before that Madison Eagles was 10 times the character once she became champion. Now, at this time, she is no longer champion. Spoilers there, if you're just tuning in. But Madison Eagles, when she comes back, something about the championship changes the character. I think once Mischief stopped being champion, she became less of a monster and more of a nice monster. Let's see. When Sarah Del Rey was becoming champion, she was that strong-willed athlete, that Japanese-influenced wrestler. When she lost the championship, she became a heel, a kind of unhinged, kind of a more tough as nails, vengeful character. I think Allison Danger, Sarah Del Rey, I should say, sorry. The two are so synonymous with Shimmer in my mind. Sarah Del Rey, I think, was an excellent champion. After she lost the championship, I think I liked her character even more. So I think for Sarah Del Rey, losing the championship actually improved her character. For Madison Eagles, I felt as if she was a decent enough character, but becoming champion improved her character incredibly. Now, I'll say more about other champions, but I feel as if Madison Eagles, she changed. She had to change. She was gone for a while after her championship loss. When she came back, she was much more of a crafty, kind of comedic cheater, more like her old character before the championship, but I think much more focused on comedy. But the thing is, with Madison Eagles, she is very versatile, very memorable, good actress in front of the fans, very natural. She comes across very natural, and I think she still endears herself despite the change in character. And Jessie McKay, I think at times maybe her style has become a little stale, but the fans do seem to love her very much. And when she is there, she will always have a solid level of performance. And so the two of them together, I think, was just great. They are similar in build, in style, and of course, if we look back, they were originally a tag team, the Pink Ladies. So to see them now facing one another once again is just, I think, something that the fans are treated to. It's definitely an above average, if not great, match. Most of the time, I will look at the individual characters and then how the match actually goes. Sometimes you have great characters, mediocre match, great match, mediocre characters. Ideally, you have both. I think Jessie McKay's character is a little less memorable here, but she is generally likable, and Madison Eagles is the cheater that you love to hate. So the two of them together is quite good. So, yes. So with this tag team title match, you have the Canadian Ninjas, Portia Perez and Nicole Matthews, of course. Kana and Lufisto, a team I'll talk about in a moment. Taylor Made and Allison Kay, of course, Made in Sin. Excellent tag team, by the way. And then Kelly Skater and Tomoka Nakagawa, the Global Green Gangsters, or 3G. This was the highlight of the evening. It was also the most intense period of action in the whole Shimmer 53 experience, and I'll explain why. Now, of course, at the time, Shimmer Tag Team Champions, the Canadian Ninjas, have a long time been annoying the fans by trying to get the win by cheating, of course, as they often do, by counting the match out, in other antics. And their antics in this particular match were just very blatant, to the point of comedy. I greatly enjoyed their misbehavior, if you will, in the match overall. Now, Kana and Lufisto, I much preferred the Kana who came from the Joshi world into Shimmer as this vicious fighter, much more like a Sarah Del Rey in terms of just overwhelming her opponents with her ego and her strength. But of course, she didn't need to trash talk the other wrestlers. She would simply yell and kick them in the face and put them in a submission hold, and that was enough. Her actions spoke louder than her words. When she became a tag team partner with Lufisto, after their excellent match a few volumes back, Lufisto changed a little by becoming a little more serious, but mostly Kana was changed from that serious, vicious athlete to more of a kind of like a little bit of a fun-loving, kind of let her hair down a little bit type of character. I think as a tag team they work excellently together. You can tell that Lufisto is a fan. She changed her hair and her outfit to more closely match what Kana is wearing. Well, anyway, they were a great tag team, and in this match, I think they had their time. It's always difficult with these type of matches to kind of highlight the different wrestlers. Sometimes these type of matches can go awry because it'll seem like it's not really a multi-person match. It's really a one-on-one, but the other wrestlers are kind of hanging around by the ring, just kind of lackadaisical, not really doing anything, and oh, no, now it's my turn to jump in. I think this was handled very well. They kept the intensity going throughout the match, and it seemed as if this was, something where it was important. We were meant to really get into it and care about the outcome. So I think overall, great job by all these women in their coordinating their match together. Much better, I would say, than the earlier multi-person matches that we had at the start of the evening, and I think better than the Midwest Militia match and so forth. Now there was some extra drama, which I'll explain in a moment. Kelly Skate and Tomoko Nakagawa, of course, are continuing to grow in the fans' estimation, continuing to be pushed. Of course, they would eventually become, the champions. But at this time, they are still struggling for that, striving. Tomoko Nakagawa, of course, is still a cheetah. Kelly Keita becoming more of a fan favorite, less of a heel. She's resisting the urge to cheat as she had in the past. She doesn't drink the beverage which gives her superpowers anymore. She's forced to rely on her strength that she always knew she had. She doesn't have to brag about it so much. She can just go in and do it. And she tries to get Tomoka to be a better person, but she can't quite succeed because Tomoka is just still in that mindset of, well, I have to cheat. And actually, it helps them here because they're going against some cheetahs. Not only are the Canadian Ninjas bad, but so are TaylorMade and Allison Kay, Made in Sin. And I think the two of them as a tag team are much better than either one of them has been individually. They had their own idiosyncrasies, but together they are just so arrogant and so trashy, yet they call themselves classy, and the chants they get into with the fans and the back and forth, just very enjoyable. And so to see them in a match, trash-talking the others, wonderful interactions. So we had some very intense moments throughout this whole thing. Where the extra drama came in was... Now, watching this live, of course, there were many delays, some technical problems. Overall, I think they did a great job for the first iPPV. There was a moment where there were some wrestlers on the outside fighting, brawling around, and Lufisto was in the ring. And she climbed up to the turnbuckle to do a move, and she slipped on the rope. And she kind of fell down. She didn't fall, hurt herself, but she just kind of, stumbled. And then she went to do the move again, and it looked like she was trying to do a moonsault, back flip into the wrestlers who were gathered at ringside. And the way it would have worked is, they would have caught her, and fallen over like bowling pins. But what happened was she jumped, and there was no one there. There was no one close enough to catch her. And she landed flat. It appeared flat on her face. And there was a very intense moment. Of course, there was a barricade right there with the fans. And apparently I heard there were some people that were crying because they thought she had died. There was no pads. She landed right on concrete. And you imagine, this woman, flying off the top turnbuckle onto the cement floor. It was terrifying. It was a terrible moment. And when I saw that live, I had just wrenching reaction. I was very worried for her safety. And that's the moment where wrestling became real because, when something like that happens, it's no longer fun and games. You worry about the person. Are they going to be okay? And you could see that the other wrestlers were struggling to maintain the composure and they tried to continue the match as best they could, but they were checking on her. And I forget now which wrestler. One of the wrestlers went right to her. I think it was Nicole Matthews, and she was checking to see, is she okay? And then finally, you could see she moved, and it's like, okay, so is she paralyzed? We don't know what happened. And then Kana comes over and pulls Nicole Matthews off of her, and just in storyline, of course, they would be continuing to fight. But then she checked on her, and I assumed they were relaying information to be sure she was going to be okay. But then Lufisto got up, and I think there was a bit of a rumble in the crowd because they thought she's okay, and the commentary team was continuing to play up the amazing durability and tenacity of Lufisto, because at this point I'm sure they didn't know what her injury was, but what we just saw is this person just crash. and not move and then get up again. So it was a bad accident. But thankfully, moving forward, you could see that Lufisto is back in the wrestling business, doing what she loves to do. But she was out for a while with her injuries, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But first, the rest of the match. So I'm sitting there, biting my fingers, watching this. And Lufisto gets up, and you can tell she's in pain, but she kind of staggers and climbs back into the ring, and she continues to fight, and she does a couple of moves, and I believe who was she fighting? She was fighting the ninjas, I believe. She gets thrown to the ropes, and normally what happens is, a character's whipped, and they start running, and they bounce off the ropes, and then they come back in to do a move. But she was thrown towards the ropes, and she just kind of fell over because she couldn't run. And then it was like, oh, her leg was the injured part. So she could just kind of prop herself up on her leg, and there was something wrong with her leg. But she was still able to grab her opponent over her shoulders to do, I believe, the burning hammer is the move. She started to do a few more moves, but she was finally defeated. And I'm sure this part was sped up for the sake of her injury, to take her out quickly out of the match and say, okay, she's out, she's done, and then get her to some medical attention. But I think she did the best she could, and it came across as, I think, as they talked about it, as a woman who is so powerful. A major injury will take her out, but she will still strive, just like any other athlete who doesn't want to quit, even though they need to because their body has given up. That's just how it is. Now, later, I learned that when she did the moonsault, the backflip, she landed, actually, her knee hit the concrete first, and it actually shattered into a few pieces. They called it an exploded kneecap. And the surgery was to, screw those pieces back together. I heard this on I think it was the Women of Wrestling podcast with the late Stu Allen and Lee Burton. Anyway, she talked about that injury. And of course, Lufisto has been through other things. She had a stroke. There was a hole in her heart that had to be surgically repaired. And of course, if you're a wrestling fan, you can't help but hear about these stories of these medical interventions, and it's quite amazing what happens to them off stage, off camera. They are human after all. They can't really do all the things that we see them do without consequences, unfortunately. But anyway, Lufisto went through this amazing recovery from this injury. She was back. You will notice in the live show, the moment where she climbs to the turnbuckle and she slips and has to climb back up again, that moment is deleted from the video on demand and the digital versatile disc versions. In those versions, she just climbs up once, does the move, and then that's it. Then we have, the viewing of the injury, and it goes on and continues. So there's just that moment of, they call it a botch when someone makes a mistake. Now, of course, the injury, of course, was a mistake also. But the worst mistake, the falling. So that was a dramatic moment. But even after that moment, of course, that was still in my mind and all the minds of all of the fans. The rest of the match that continued with the Canadian Ninjas and the 3G and so forth. Kana continuing the fight, for her partner. All of those things. I think it was a very, very solid showing by all of the women involved. Very good performances, very convincing. And I think the highlight, as I said, of the evening, a retirement match for Ayumi Kurihara. Ayumi Kurihara goes against Mercedes Martinez, and this was a wonderful match. Now, Yako Hamada and Tomoka Nakagawa also came out, opened the ring ropes for Ayumi Kurihara. She came out for her last Shimmer match. This was emotional for many of the fans, and including myself, because I did appreciate Ayumi Kurihara, and then hearing how she had to retire because of injuries made me a little sad. She came across as very sincere and genuine in her love of her time in Shimmer. They recorded just a little short video of her thanking the fans, saying that she always had fun, as she spoke in a kind of a broken English. As she was at the airport, I assume, going back to Japan, never to return as an active wrestler. But anyway, Yumi Kurihara, she had her, I think, her official retirement match in Japan. If you check that out, I've seen parts of it online. It's actually very entertaining. The retirement matches for many of these Japanese wrestlers, who are still in good enough shape to have a match, of course, are very entertaining, especially the women's wrestlers. But anyway, so if you have a chance to see that, definitely check it out. But Yumi Kurihara and Mercedes Martinez had a wonderful match. Mercedes Martinez, of course, solid wrestler. I always enjoy seeing her in the ring. She just does an excellent job. Anyway, Ayako Hamada and Athena had a match. This was not as good, I think, as it could have been, but I generally appreciate Ayako Hamada and her amazing talents. Whether it is a large crowd or a small crowd, she is always in top form. I think Athena, at times it appeared she was, I don't know, just not as good as she normally is. But as a wrestler in general, she's very solid. And so while this was not her greatest match, it nevertheless was good. I think there was a period of volumes where just Athena did not quite appear to be as good as she normally was. I'm not sure if she was making mistakes or she was tired or injured. But later on, after a few volumes, I think she caught her stride again, and she became much more in the top form that we'd always expected from her, if that makes sense. Now, if you're a first-time viewer, you wouldn't notice that. You just say, "Wow, she's good." But when a wrestler has been at a certain level, and then they kind of maybe they have an off night or they're kind of nursing an injury, you're a little bit disappointed because you wish that they were as good as they used to be. So anyway, decent enough match. There were a few moments where Ayako Hamada she showed kind of a mean side, because as I pointed out, many of the Joshi wrestlers, they will be cheered by the fans, and yet at times they will use dastardly tactics. Well, there was a moment where it appeared that Hamada was going to go in that direction and just kind of become a heel, but it didn't happen. She just kind of tricked Athena into shaking her hand and kind of suckered her with a move, but it didn't matter. It was just one of those moments. So I think the fans were waiting for something to happen and it didn't. So I'm not really sure. It's just one of those things. Because as far as wrestlers go, Hamada was much more of that straight style of always heroic. Even though at times she will do these comedic, little gestures and things, she rarely cheats, very rarely, that I've seen, especially in Shimmer. Anyway, so the final match, Saraya Knight versus Cheerleader Melissa. Now this was played up as the biggest, deal in the world because they had played up that storyline previously of Saraya Knight. Of course, she was this wicked, bully of a mother who had driven Brittany Knight to turn against her and to leave the promotion, of course, to become Paige in the WWE, which of course she's very proud of in real life. But in the storyline, she had cast out, and you're no daughter of mine, and you're no mother of mine, then fine. And they had split up, and then she blamed the fans. You broke up our family. You turned her against me, and she's just this wicked person. But then they created this strange storyline, which I've criticized before, saying that there was this match that they had years ago, Cheerleader Melissa and Saraya Knight, and they claimed that there was this pop can in the audience that a fan had been chipping away at it, and so it was a sharp-edged can made of aluminum, and that somehow Saraya, when they were brawling in the crowd, she had brushed against it on her kneecap, and then it was bleeding, and you could see in the match that there was blood around her knee, and the injury turned out to be that her kneecap was cut, almost severed completely, and they said, she could have lost her leg, and she had to go through this long surgical, and physical rehab, to heal it back, and they even showed, video of her smiling and her family, and portrayed very sympathetically. And then the storyline was that, well, if you see in the footage, well, this is very common in wrestling. Watch any of these matches where a legitimate real-life injury occurs. Usually it's between a good guy and a bad guy. Well, the good guy gets injured, the bad guy will kind of pretend to, he keep hurting them. They say, oh, you're injured, haha, I'll laugh at you, mock you, I'll hit you a few more times, I'll even target the actual injured limb. And in reality, what they're doing, they're very carefully checking out. They're getting close so they can talk to the wrestler and say, are you okay? You're really injured? Okay, well, what should we do? How should we finish this up in a theatrical way and then get you to safety? And they're pretending to target the injured, but they're not really, because that seems to be a lawsuit waiting to happen. Why would you further injure someone you already know is injured in real life? Well, the strange way that Shimmer portrayed this backstage stuff, it was, cheerleader Melissa was portrayed as this bad person, legitimately bad person in real life. She is a bad person. Melissa Anderson is not a good person because she attacked the actual injury of Saraya Knight. Of course, that's not her real name. Julie Hamer, I believe is her name. That to me, I think, was crossing the line. I'm sure the wrestlers agreed to this, but it was just a strange storyline. I didn't like it at all because what were they trying to say? They were trying to say that the bad wrestler is actually a good person in real life. The good wrestler is actually a bad person in real life. And so we're going to use that as a motivation for a pretend match where the good person continues to pretend to be a bad person, and the bad person continues to pretend to be a good person, and they have a match. It doesn't make any sense at all. So I think Shimmer really failed when they did that, and I hate to be so harsh, but it just didn't make any sense at all, really. When you think about it, it didn't make any sense at all. Now, if the injury was fake, fine, but I think it was real because, she went through all of that, and it was such a long time ago they couldn't have planned it that way. But anyway, if you forget all of that, and I think that's the best thing for fans to do, just pretend that never happened. Pretend that Saraya Knight is the bad person she always was. Melissa's the good person she became after she was bad when she first started. And that Saraya Knight was angry at cheerleader Melissa for whatever reason. She's angry at everyone. Why do you need a reason? The two of them had a steel cage match. This was played up as the first Shimmer steel cage match, and it certainly was. Now, the Berwyn Eagles Club actually has been home to other promotions. There's AAW that almost always performs before Shimmer, and they have had a steel cage match, but it was a little comical if you can see the footage online, because the steel cage they used was very, very short. The ceiling is not high enough in the Berwyn Eagles Club to have a WWE, WWF style steel cage, and with the four sides, and it's huge. It would have been, the ceiling would have gotten in the way. So it was very short. And the way it was, if you can imagine, okay, you've got the apron of the ring here, and then you've got the, the cage walls, but they're almost flush with the turnbuckles. So if a wrestler were to climb the turnbuckle, which is very common in a match anyway, they could just kind of lift their leg a little bit and just step right over the cage and escape. It was very silly. Even if you have very short wrestlers, it looks wrong. And so I think when they were at the Meadowlands Expo Center, which of course is this large open air, not open air, but more like a warehouse, like an arena, very large, they can have this tall cage, and it was so tall you could almost see it. The cage walls would wiggle a little bit. They were just tied together with some almost like little plastic or bungee cord type things, and it was not very secure at all. I was a little worried. I thought, that doesn't look very safe. The way the match worked is it was basically a standard match. It was no disqualification. The whole point of a steel cage is to keep out other wrestlers who may interfere, to prevent a wrestler from running away, hiding outside the ring, and that sort of thing. But often the stipulation is to climb over the ring and escape, or burst through a door. There was nothing of that kind at all. The ring was simply surrounded by this very tall cage, and it was just there. There were a few moments when cheerleader Melissa and Saraya Knight used the cage, I think, to good effect. They climbed up, they kind of hung on, they kind of bashed each other's faces into the metal, and they did, a couple of moves. But generally, the cage almost didn't matter. It was just decoration. So I had mixed feelings about that, but I think the overall match the two of them had, there's a little bit of decreased visibility, because in many of these promotions that have the steel cage, they will cut a little hole and put the camera through. I don't think they did that, so it was kind of obscured. But I think it added just a little bit of something extra, because we had not seen a cage match in Shimmer before, and so this was a nice thing. And actually on the DVD, there was a little disclaimer, some text that appeared on the screen as the match was starting. I think when Saraya Knight was coming down the entrance ramp with the music and everything, it said, this match is not suitable for younger viewers, viewer discretion, parental guidance is suggested, something along those lines. Because as you can see, Saraya Knight, even though this is a family show, and she often gets these chants, family show, da da da, because she'll say something like, she'll say kind of a swear word, or she'll give, flip the bird, as they say, give the finger, something Steve Austin would have done. But that was generally unheard of in Shimmer, even though there were a few off-color moments, I think, in the very early years of Shimmer, that first run of volumes, 1 through maybe 10 or so. After that, it became more of a family-friendly product, more of a PG, as opposed to, full-on, Attitude Era or TNA, esque thing. Well, Saraya Knight is the X factor there, because she will occasionally break the rule and do something a little uncouth. So this match had that disclaimer. It was a good match, and there was a moment at the end where, at this time, of course, Saraya is the champion. She has taken the belt from cheerleader Melissa, and Melissa's trying to get it back. Well, spoiler, you can end the video here. Great DVD, check it out. Cheerleader Melissa gains her title back, and Saraya's furious. And again, this makes the storyline that was created by the Shimmer team about the injury and what happened backstage and who's a good person, who's a bad person, makes no sense whatsoever. A completely unsatisfying ending. But if we forget all of that, pretend it didn't happen, which the live shows, never gave you that indication, Saraya's furious that she lost, and she slaps a fan in the face, and he kind of does he spins around and falls to the ground in slow motion. It was very funny. I'm not sure what the plan was. Usually these are plants. Usually these are actually wrestlers that are engaged in these, fan versus wrestler interactions. But this almost appeared to be like a journalist or a backstage, fan, and he just kind of went along with it, and it was hilarious. I'm sure she didn't hit him that hard, but he acted as if, he'd been knocked unconscious. It was quite ridiculous, and a good ending, I think, to the overall show. I think that was the effect they were going for, is that the fans would be, knocked loopy by how great Shimmer was. So overall, I would say 53 was not a perfect show by any means. It was a little different. I think there was a few rough spots, mainly because of the different venue. Now, you think of the floor of the Berwyn Eagles Club is made of wood. It's a hollow floor, as opposed to, a solid concrete. So that unfortunately presented that injury angle for Lufisto. But apart from her, terrible injury, which thankfully she is healed from, overall, I think very good show, worthwhile to watch. And as it was many non-fans' introduction to Shimmer, I think it would make a decent introduction to the fans, who want to get into it now with the digital versatile discs. But nevertheless, I would still prefer, if you are a fan, or if you want to introduce your friends to Shimmer, to show them 37, or start with 41. Don't start with this just because, while it's good on its own, I think there's nothing else like it. None of the other shows have the same feel that this has, because not only is it live, it's that large venue, it's totally different. The ring looks different, everything is different, and there's no more like this. This is it. So anyway, and the digital versatile disc costs about the same as the video on demand version, so you choose which is your preference. So that does it for my review of Shimmer 53. I enjoyed it. It would have been nice to be there live, but I think, as was pointed out, chances are, if I was there in person, I would be back far, so it would be like seeing a WWE show without paying a huge amount of money. You're just going to be kind of watching, and so you might as well be seeing it through a stream or on a digital versatile disc. But the volumes that followed were excellent. 54, 55, very good. 56, 57, of course I didn't see live, but continuing the weekend. And I'll say more about those digital versatile discs when I come back. But I thank you for your patience. I've had my share of technical difficulties recording these reviews, but I very much enjoy them, and I can't wait to do these and future ones. So once again, thank you for